For true basement horror stories that still haunt people, basements are meant to be storage spaces, places to keep old furniture, boxes of forgotten memories, and things you don't need every day. But for many people, basements become something else entirely. They're cut off from the outside world, buried beneath layers of concrete and earth, quiet in a way that feels unnatural. And once something goes wrong down there, it tends to stay with you for the rest of your life. These are 4 true horror stories from people whose experiences in basements still haunt them years later. Story 1. The locked door that was never there. I grew up in a small, older house that had a basement most people avoided. It wasn't finished, just bare concrete walls, exposed beams, and a single hanging light bulb that barely illuminated anything. As a kid, I hated going down there. The stairs were steep and narrow, and the air always felt colder than the rest of the house. My parents told me it was just my imagination. One afternoon when I was about 12, my mum asked me to grab a box of old photo albums from the basement. I didn't want to, but she insisted. I turned on the light and slowly made my way down the stairs. The basement looked the same as always. Dusty shelves, stacked boxes, the old washing machine humming softly. As I walked toward the back corner, something caught my eye. There was a door. It was set into the concrete wall, painted the same dull gray. I had never seen it before. I stood there, confused. I'd been in that basement dozens of times. There was never a door there. I walked closer. It was a solid wooden door with a metal handle and a deadbolt lock. The door looked old, scratched, chipped, like it had been there a long time. I tried the handle. It didn't budge. The lock was engaged from the outside. I felt a sudden wave of unease. I called out for my mum, but my voice echoed strangely and sounded distant, like the basement swallowed the sound. I ran back upstairs and told her about the door. She looked confused and said there was no door in the basement. She came down with me to prove it. The door was gone. The wall was solid concrete, just like it had always been. No seams, no outline, no sign that a door had ever been there. My mom told me I must have imagined it. I wanted to believe her, but that night, lying in bed, I heard something beneath my room. A sound coming from the basement. It sounded like someone knocking. Not on the door to the basement, but from inside the walls. Slow, deliberate, 3 knocks at a time. It went on for nearly an hour. My parents never heard it. Years later, when we sold the house, the new owners started renovating the basement. During demolition, they found an old sealed-off doorway behind one of the walls. No one could explain where it led. Story 2. The man under the stairs. I rented a small house during college with 2 roommates. The place was cheap, old, and came with an unfinished basement we mostly ignored. The only thing down there was the laundry area and a storage space under the stairs. The door to that storage space stayed shut. None of us ever opened it. One night, I went down to do laundry around midnight. The basement light flickered on, casting long shadows across the floor. As I loaded the washer, I heard something, breathing. At first, I thought it was just the pipes. Old houses make noises. I told myself that, and tried to ignore it, but the breathing didn't stop. It sounded slow and controlled, like someone trying to stay quiet. I turned off the washer and listened. The sound was coming from under the stairs, from behind the storage door. I stood frozen, staring at it. The breathing paused, then continued louder. Now, like whoever it was knew I was listening. I backed away slowly and ran upstairs, heart pounding. I told my roommates. They laughed it off, saying it was probably an animal. Still, none of us went down there alone after that. A few nights later, one of my roommates found muddy footprints on the basement floor. They led from the storage door to the stairs, and nowhere else. We called the landlord, who reluctantly came to check it out. He opened the storage door while we stood back. It was empty. No bedding, no food, no sign anyone had been there. But the smell hit us immediately. A strong, sour odor that hadn't been there before. The landlord brushed it off and said it was probably mold. 2 weeks later, the police knocked on our door. They asked if we'd noticed anything strange coming from the basement. Turns out, a man had been arrested nearby for breaking into houses and hiding in basements. He'd been living under staircases and leaving only at night to steal food. He admitted to staying in our basement for several days. The police said if we hadn't reported the noises, he might have stayed much longer. I still think about how close I came to opening that storage door while he was inside. Story 3. The basement that answered back. I worked nights and slept during the day. I lived alone in a small house with a finished basement that served as a spare living space. One afternoon, I was lying on the couch upstairs when I heard a noise from below. Someone was calling my name. It was faint, muffled, like it was coming through the ceiling. I sat up, heart racing. I knew no one else was home. I called out, asking who was there. There was a pause. Then the voice answered. It sounded like me. Same tone, same cadence, same voice. It called my name again. I grabbed my phone and slowly walked to the basement door. I stood at the top of the stairs, listening. The voice came again, louder now, clearer. Come down here. My blood ran cold. I locked the basement door and called a friend, staying on the line while I waited for evening. When I finally worked up the courage to check the basement later that night, everything looked normal. No signs of entry, no one there. But over the next few weeks, it kept happening. Always during the day, always when I was alone. Sometimes it would mimic my voice perfectly. Other times, it sounded slightly wrong, like an imitation that wasn't quite right. I recorded it once on my phone. When I played it back, there was nothing, just silence. The final time it happened, the voice didn't call my name. It laughed, low, quiet, right beneath my feet. I moved out the next week. The house is still standing. New owners moved in. They don't use the basement. Story 4. The room behind the shelves. My grandparents' house had a basement that stretched the length of the house. It was packed with shelves, boxes, and old furniture. As a kid, I loved exploring down there during family visits. I thought it was like a maze. One summer, when I was about 14, I noticed something strange. One of the shelving units at the far end of the basement looked off. It didn't match the others. The shelves were newer, cleaner, and when I pushed against it, it moved slightly. Curious, I waited until everyone was upstairs and pulled it aside. Behind it was a narrow doorway. The air coming from inside was cold and stale. The room beyond was small and windowless, with bare concrete walls. There was a chair in the center. Facing the wall, the floor was scuffed, like something heavy had been dragged in and out repeatedly. I felt sick. I put the shelf back and ran upstairs, telling my grandparents what I'd found. They went pale immediately. My grandfather told me never to go into the basement alone again. Later that night, I overheard them arguing. My grandmother wanted to call the police. My grandfather insisted it was from a long time ago, and no one used it anymore. Years later, after my grandparents passed away, the house was sold. During renovations, the new owners found the hidden room. They contacted the police. I don't know all the details, but I do know this. The room had been used by a previous owner decades earlier for something illegal, something involving people who never came back. The chair was bolted to the floor. Some basements don't just store old things, they hide them. Basements feel different for a reason. They're quiet, isolated, separated from the rest of the world by layers of earth and concrete. And when something goes wrong down there, it doesn't just fade away. It lingers in the walls, in the air, in the memories of the people who experienced it. And for those people, no matter how many years pass, some basements are never truly left behind.